I'm 75 years old, so I've been a lot of places, seen a lot of crazy stuff, and heard a lot of things, stories. And here are 3 of the creepiest ghost stories I've ever been told. Matthew, England. I'd never been a believer in the supernatural. I was raised in a hard household when that type of thing wasn't entertained. But the story I'm about to tell you changed my thought process and has left me a lot more open-minded. I was around 23 years old and was driving a custom 1970s show Beetle with a fully polished chrome engine. It was about 1 a.m. in the Black Country near Dudley. I was dropping my girlfriend home. She was fast asleep in the passenger seat. I pulled up to the red lights right next to Berry Hill Park. It was dead quiet and I seemed to be the only car on the road. As I sat there waiting, I looked up at the high grass bank of the park that borders the road. I saw a little girl. She was standing high up on the embankment, maybe 6 or 7 years old. She was just staring down at the road. The area around the park was kind of rough, and kids tended to be left to their own devices, but still, it felt wrong. A little girl out that late alone in the dark? The lights changed. I drove off, and by the time I dropped my girlfriend off and drove back past that same spot 10 minutes later, she was gone and I put it out of my mind. A few nights later, I was making the same trip, around the same time, and I reached those same traffic lights. I looked toward the park, and there she was. This time standing by a 6-foot billboard which usually displayed posters for local events. Her clothes looked filthy and dated. There was no poster on the board, yet she had her face pressed right up against the glass, staring at the empty space. I sat there staring at the back of her head, and I suddenly got an overwhelming feeling of dread. I knew if she turned around and looked at me, it wouldn't be good. The light changed to green, and I put my foot down. I avoided driving past the park at night for a week or so, but eventually I had to pass through. I pulled up to the lights around 12:30 a.m., checking the bank and the billboard. Nothing. I felt a massive sense of relief. That was until I looked in my rearview mirror. She was standing in the road directly behind my car. She stood there looking at me before walking slowly toward my door. It wasn't a normal walk, and I can't explain why, but it was terrifying. That night, I didn't care about the law or the red light. I buried my foot in the floor, ran the light, and didn't stop until I was home. That was the night I realized there's a lot more out there than I thought. I've since learned that over the years a lot of children have drowned in the Edale Lake at the back of the park. Is that linked to the girl? I don't know. I've moved away since, so I guess I never will. K. England. After my divorce, I bought an old fixer-upper in Lancashire. It was a creaky place that needed a lot of work, but I was determined to make it a proper home for me and my 2 sons. It was close to the canal, which was peaceful, but the house had its quirks. The main one was the cellar door in the kitchen. After about 2 weeks of living there, almost every morning, I'd come downstairs and find it wide open. I knew for a fact I'd closed it the night before. I tried to be rational about it. I figured with a canal nearby, maybe we had a rat problem. My sister had passed away less than a year before. We were never close. She was an erratic woman with a cold heart, and even in death, her memory felt heavy. I didn't associate her with the house, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I decided to stay awake on the sofa to catch whatever was opening that door. I kept the kitchen light on and waited. But as the hours crawled by, my eyes grew heavy, and I eventually drifted off. A cold draft woke me. I was disoriented, staring up at the ceiling, trying to remember why I was on the sofa. I felt sluggish, my head thick with sleep. Then I saw a movement from the corner of my eye. A face began to peer over the back of the sofa, right above my head. It was my sister. It was her face, but it looked different. It was slightly bloated, gray, and twisted into a wide, malicious grin. She was staring directly down at me, her eyes empty but fixed. I didn't think. I just screamed. I lunged off that sofa and bolted out of the room, my heart hammering against my ribs. The noise woke my sons, who came running out of their rooms, terrified. I eventually forced myself back into the kitchen. The cellar door was wide open. I slammed it shut, locked it, and sat up with the lights on until the sun came up. I didn't stay in the house much longer after that. You can fix a house, but you can't fix a memory like that. I moved out shortly after, and I've never looked back or seen my sister since. Richie from Louisiana. I didn't have a normal childhood. We lived in an old, creaky house deep in Louisiana. When I was 9, my parents began leaving me to look after my 1-year-old sister whilst they went out drinking. It was a pretty regular occurrence. My father had a rule. Every single night, lights had to be off before we went to bed to save electricity. Once my sister was tucked in and asleep, I started at the front door. I killed the TV, then moved through the house, flicking off every switch as I retreated toward the bedroom. The shadows in that house always gave me the creeps, so I didn't linger. I jumped into bed, huddled up next to my sister, and eventually fell into a heavy sleep. I was shaken awake by the deafening sound of loud, rhythmic banging that seemed to vibrate through the walls. I couldn't tell where it was coming from, but it was aggressive. I lay there paralyzed, my heart thumping, while my sister somehow slept through the noise. Then I noticed a gap under the door. The landing light was on. I crept out of bed and opened the door. Every single light I had turned off was now burning bright. The whole house was lit up except for the room I was in. The banging suddenly stopped, leaving a silence that was even worse. Mom? Dad? Thinking my parents might have come home and were testing me. I went through the house again, heart in my throat, turning every light off for the second time. I just wanted them to be home so I could feel safe. As I reached our bedroom and went to close the door, I saw a movement at the far end of the landing. A figure emerged from the back bedroom and started walking down the stairs. I was confused. I thought maybe it was an uncle or a friend of the family who sometimes stayed over. Against my better judgment, I followed. I crept down the stairs, calling out into the dark. As I rounded the corner at the bottom of the staircase, I walked straight into him. Standing right in front of me was a man, maybe 19 years old. He was deathly pale and emaciated, his skin clinging to his bones. He didn't look like he belonged in this century, let alone in our house. I let out a scream, turned, and bolted back up the stairs. I slammed the bedroom door and hovered over my sister, who was finally awake and crying from the noise. I sat on the edge of that bed, staring at the handle, until I heard my parents walking up the driveway an hour later. Not long after that, my parents divorced, and me and my sister moved out with my mom. Every cloud has a silver lining. I guess